We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. The college football playoff is going to 12 teams this season. It's very exciting. You guys have probably heard about it. The thing that I am probably most excited about personally with the 12-team playoff is the opening round games. 4 teams get byes, but the next 4 play first-round games on campus with seeds 5 to 8 hosting those games against seeds 9 to 12. Home playoff games on college campuses are not an entirely new phenomenon in football. They do it in the FCS and the lower level playoffs every year, for example. But it's going to be awesome. And at the highest level of the sport, it will be completely new. It's never happened before. Imagine like Texas or Michigan or Oregon or Florida State hosting a playoff game against a G5 champ like UTSA or a Penn State or an Ole Miss, a tier of program that's been good but has never made it into the dance. It's just going to be cool all around. And I think to us, that's all it has to be. I will be watching these games. You guys will be watching these games. But casuals pretty much will not be watching these games because on Saturday, December 21st, there will be 3 of these first-round playoff games on campus, but there will also be 2 NFL regular season games being played on that day, presumably at the same time because there's only so many hours in the day, as the NFL gets into its late season Saturday-Sunday cadence. And they're not junk NFL games either. It's a good Texans-Chiefs game. It's a good Steelers-Ravens game, such as those are always kind of ugly, but usually competitive and have high stakes. So the NFL, we have more than enough data to know, squeezes the life out of everything else on TV by a multiple of many times over. And that really counts even for a good college football game. For example, 25 million people watched Washington and Michigan play in that title game last season. That barely beat the least viewed NFL playoff game. And the only one that it beat was the Chiefs-Dolphins Peacock exclusive game at about 23 million, which nearly tied it. So from the perspective of growing college football, it's probably not great for the sport to have such an excellent showcase, these first-round on-campus playoff games, be head-to-head with Goliath and also on cable on ESPN while the NFL has network slots. If you are listening to this show here and you are a Split Zone Duo listener in May or June or whenever you are listening to this, not your problem at all. I guess it is my problem as a Steelers fan who covers college football, so I will miss a Steelers game. But it did get us thinking. The NFL had a chance to let college football have a moment. And it's not only not doing that, it is going balls to the wall by taking games off of Sundays and putting good NFL games up against college football's biggest moment at this time of year ever. The NFL does that even though college football has made substantial efforts to dance around the NFL over the years. We'll get to that, including having the national championship game on Monday nights at a time when every year we all look around and say, why is this game on a Monday? Well, it's because of the NFL. So how big a problem is this for college football? And by this, I guess I don't really mean this one day of conflict, but I mean the overarching war, or probably better to just call it sort of a one-sided invasion on the NFL's part, because I don't really think it's going to be much of a fair fight. The NFL beats everything whenever it wants to, and it will beat college football. I'm Alex Kirshner. Welcome to my co-hosts, Stephen Godfrey and Richard Johnson. Hello, fellas. How are we?
I'm doing great.
I, for one, as a New York resident, am fine to watch the Jets. They got a great defense. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers' leg doesn't explode.
Well, with his medicinal solutions that are available to him, I'm sure that he will be.
If you want to watch that,
great.
I don't kink shame. Everybody's into something.
Richard, first off, you covered this process of the playoffs expansion and logistical table setting pretty closely for Sports Illustrated over the last year or two. Was this competition with the NFL a thing that they couldn't have wanted because it's a made-for-TV product going up against a bigger TV product, avoidable in any way? Or if you're going to expand the playoff, did this just have to happen, that college football was going to have a day where it was pretty severely overshadowed?
Yeah, I mean, pull up a calendar. Like, find me the day of the week where this wasn't going to happen. Now, I know, yeah, you could play the games on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I get that. I think for logistical reasons with the legitimate towns that college football is played in, I don't necessarily think that's palatable, and that's just one reason. I think there are plenty of issues with that, and that's why they absolutely opted not to do it. I think that if you push deeper into January, which you have to, this was going to happen. If you want to talk about encroachment, in a technical sense, college football is encroaching on, in air quotes, the NFL's turf by doing this deeper into January. I think the best case scenario is college football's done and dusted by New Year's Day, but we haven't been doing that for 25 years.
Does college basketball encroach on the NFL? Does
No.
the NHL? Does the NBA?
They're different sports. That's not a one-to-one comparison. Like, that's not a one-to-one comparison.
So has the NFL encroached onto college?
I don't look at it that way because I think the NFL supersedes the sport of football.
But you just said they were the same sport, but now it supersedes the sport of football.
They are the same sport nominally if you want to compare them like that, but I don't think the NFL.
You just did. You said that college is encroaching on the NFL because it's the same sport, and it's not the same as when other sports counter program or work against the NFL. So is it one or the other?
I think it can be both in this sense. I think from college's perspective, that's the NFL. We do compete, but I don't think the NFL has to concern itself with any other thing. So
to review, if a sport expands or changes their calendar inside the window of NFL activity, that's encroaching on the NFL. But if the NFL moves games to Black Friday, which is traditionally a college time, moves games to Thanksgiving, traditionally college time, takes over Christmas Day from the NBA, that's just the NFL's manifest destiny?
Yeah, because it's the biggest pop culture thing we do in this country. Beyond it being a sport.
Well, we is a I would say maybe probably too large of a term here, but also
yes, I agree.
So you're giving essentially the total benefit of the doubt and carte blanche to the largest entity solely because of their size.
Yeah, what do you guys want the NFL? I think I know the answer to this question, but what do you guys want the NFL to do in this respect?
Well,
I don't want them to really do anything. I feel like we're jumping ahead in the conversation. I'm of the belief that the NFL can be counter-programmed. It's just you don't want to do it in a one-to-one sense of thinking that you're going to win a ratings war. But I do think there are ways to have success counter-program the NFL. I also think the NFL is eventually going to expand to the point where it cannot sustain. And I don't think that the product has enough quality and depth to where they can continue to spread things out and infiltrate all these dates. Eventually, that will create gaps in terms of the quality of the product. But then also, this is just a very sort of binary way of assessing an issue, which is that there are millions and millions of Americans who don't watch the NFL and would rather watch a different sporting event. And so if we operate by simply saying the largest thing has total dominance and therefore should go unopposed, that's bad business. Honestly, that's bad business in broadcasting. That's like saying all the other channels should go dark.
I wouldn't say that the NFL should go unopposed at all. I think that I'm expressing mild surprise, though it gets less surprising as you look at the lack of available dates, that a product that was expanded primarily, first and foremostly for TV, which is the playoff, and that's the reason it's going from 4 to 12, is because everyone's going to make more TV money from Disney, would settle on a logistical arrangement that puts 3 of the 4 first-round games, an all-time special day for the sport, in a spot where they're not going to do that well commercially because of what they're up against.
Well, they didn't have a choice, though.
However,
they didn't have a choice.
That's the thing. Like, you think they're like jumping for joy at this? Like, know this is the game.
This is kind of my question, though, that comes off. I was like, I got a few questions. But, like, Godfrey, are you surprised, for instance, that ESPN, Disney, would sanction something where it is competing seriously with NFL games that I believe are on NBC and I haven't looked. I think NBC and Fox that day, or NBC and CBS. Like, are you surprised that, given the importance of the NFL relationship to ESPN, that they would be doing this? Because actually, college football will take some viewers from the NFL.
Yes,
I mean,
no, it doesn't
not
surprise
as
me.
many as the other way.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
It doesn't, because they usually put on bowling during NFL games or reruns or something.
That's not true. Disney and ESPN have to compete against the NFL all the time. They don't put on bowling on Sunday nights when NBC has Sunday Night Football. They don't put bowling on Thursday nights when Prime has the NFL football. The NFL you have to contend with at a certain point. A reverse vantage point on this is, what do you think about the stakeholders at NBC who wanted so badly to get reinvested and expand in college football, taking games and posing them against the college football playoff?
That is interesting.
Also,
I thought about that.
Other question.
Feeling a little bit salty about that.
We're setting the table here against anything that isn't the NFL. Why did the NFL expand to 17 games in the regular season for television? Why did the Major League Baseball expand their playoff system? Why does the NBA have an in-season tournament? Why like every single expansion of a product is for television?
Actually, well, yes, in a way, but I think the MLB expansion is interesting. I have a different theory about that expansion. I think the MLB playoffs expanded because the league wanted more teams to be nominally in the hunt deeper into the season.
Why?
Without really having to try. I mean, I promise I'm not going to turn this into a Pittsburgh baseball.
No, I mean, I'll tell you. No, it's not.
But I do think that.
Why?
I'm serious. So I think that what happened in baseball is that there's 20 teams out of the 30 who aren't really at the ownership level committed to contending. And when you make the playoffs a 3 wild card, 3 division winners, so 6 teams per league system out of the 15, you give more teams an opportunity to fall ass backwards into contention and keep people watching for longer.
And hold on.
What was the verb that you used? You used the verb watch.
You got there because in Major League Baseball, national television ratings are not the most important thing. It's actually the local television ratings, because the local television ratings are really what undergird a lot of these teams' revenue. Please Google Bally Sports if you really want an afternoon of light reading, or Diamond Sports if you really want an afternoon of light reading. And so, yeah, you juice local TV ratings in this scenario in August, because a team is falling ass backwards into the hunt, and the local TV ratings of a professional baseball team are better deeper into the season. Right there, that's the game.
Yeah,
right. Which is, and the idea that all these things are going to go unopposed is just simply false. But also the idea that we should just shrug our shoulders when the NFL moves because they're the biggest is a fallacy. It's basically like it's so reductive, respective to not only the sport that we cover, but also just the general palate of the American consumer, that it doesn't even make good business sense. And so I'm not saying the NFL should have cleared the decks for the college playoff. I personally don't view this, and I'm not assailing the topic, Alex, but this anxiety that I saw in the media reaction when this was announced was a little silly to me, because this goes back to something that's been a really sort of weird issue. Like, I just recorded a single wing, and the entire structure of week 1, I don't want to spoil it, but like you can see now, and they haven't announced everything yet, ESPN moved quality inventory, Clemson versus Georgia in Mercedes, to noon. Do you know why they're doing that? Because they've now decided that they want to win that time slot against Fox, who trumped and finally sort of and really beat their chest about it last year, a little bit the year before, about winning that time slot. Fox has done something really intuitive, which is that they're winning spots that weren't contested, rather than taking and throwing a punch directly at like primetime ABC. Another reason why, actually, Alex, is that Fox has primetime baseball on the actual Fox network, not the cable networks, all the way until the end of the regular season. So they lose September and October.
Fox fell ass backwards into the noon thing. Like, Fox has primetime baseball, Yankees, Red Sox at 8 o'clock. All right, well, we got to put the college football somewhere. We're probably not going to put the best college football at 3:30 because, and I'm going back 2, 3, 4, 5 years, CBS has the 3:30 on broadcast SEC. So throw it at noon, and we win noon. CBS can have 3:30, have a ball, and then ESPN does their Saturday Night Football thing, and there was some level of harmony, and now things are going to change. I do. Like,
hang on, there's one asterisk there. one of the most lucrative ad sales blocks in cable is that pregame slot, like because game day makes ESPN so much money. Fox also looked at that and said, we could replicate that from a revenue standpoint. So what I'm about to say sounds insane and it sounds like the tail wagging the dog, but welcome to media corporations. Moving inventory into Big Noon Saturday helped bolster the pregame show. And by bolstering the pregame show, they can sell more and more valuable inventory on the ad level. Like I think Wendy's was the anchor sponsor of the pregame show going into Big Noon. I don't know what the actual, is it called the Fox pregame show? I don't know what it's called, but
it's called Big Noon.
It doesn't really matter.
Big Noon.
Okay, right. So it's all a brand, right? So that was the other reason that they were doing that, is that there's a television revenue aspect to it on the ad side. But the idea that we all have to hem and haw about this, you are within your rights as a consumer to exercise agency and choice here. In other words, you can just simply watch and enjoy the college football playoff. Is it ideal? No. But I also want to point something out here. College football is a very, very, very poorly managed sport because it's a confederacy. It's a flotilla. And we spent the last 5 years behind us laughing that the organizational body of the college football playoff, which is basically ESPN, was dumping the two play-in games that we had in the 14 bracket on New Year's. They were acquiescing to the Rose Bowl. They were having to deal with an NFL schedule some years. There were lots of problems there. And it hurt them badly in the ratings several times by dumping the games on New Year's Eve. That was something that did not work in terms of television ratings. I would argue that probably going head-to-head with one NFL game is not ideal, but it's still a better situation overall and quote-unquote crowding the calendar with your expanded playoff. I get tripped up in this conversation because I'm so fascinated by the way we look at college football playoff, the college football playoff system expanding and say, oh, well, they're really crowding into January. No one fucking says that about the NFL. All they say is, oh, more NFL content, whether you like it or not. I don't understand why we can't cast a critical eye just because one of them wins in the ratings and the other one doesn't.
I don't think it's beyond the one of them wins in the ratings. It goes back to the thing that if you go deeper into January, you are competing with the thing that is in January, which is
Richard,
the NFL's
if they went backwards on the regular season NFL schedule, who would they be competing with?
Funny enough,
we did a show about this.
Yes, we did. We did.
Who are they competing with?
They're sucking up the college football.
But you just said it doesn't matter because they transcend football.
Right, yeah. And they take it and they do what they do.
Okay.
So I think you guys are arguing from two different perspectives. Richard is making kind of the realpolitik point, which is correct, that there's no real competition when the NFL is involved. And Godfrey, you're making the point, and I'm doing this myself. I'm falling prey to it. This segment wouldn't be happening if it was going the other way. And it would. I mean, you would probably do it on a single wing, but it would be seen as less of an audacious move, or less of a. It would be seen as more of an audacious move. It would be seen as less of a sensible thing if it was, the NFL going and grabbing from college, which, by the way, it's done, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, nobody cared.
Yeah,
like nobody. There was no national think piece when they steamrolled through Thanksgiving or Black Friday or Christmas Day.
So I think that there was, but this was before any of us were alive, a pretty big national shitstorm about keeping the NFL off of colleges and off of high schools' days. And we have talked about this piecemeal over the years, but there's that 1961 law, it's called the Sports Broadcasting Act, that did two things. And this, I imagine that this was a furious debate at the time, and that it passed with this language for a reason. Big thing that it did is it let the sports leagues sell their rights together, which when you think about it is cartel behavior, because really these are 30 different businesses in a sports league or 32 different businesses in a sports league. And the fact that they can sell together to networks instead of one by one allows them to get a much better price because they consolidate and they flex bigger market power. But the other thing that law did was that in exchange for sports leagues being able to sell their media rights as one, what it said was essentially, using different legislative language, that if the NFL put a game on a Friday night against high school or put a game on a Saturday against college within like 75 miles of a college game, or with a college game within like 75 miles of the originating broadcast station, then sorry, NFL, you lose your antitrust exemption. So you can no longer sell your media deals the way you do. And that is why.
And you can no longer have a salary cap.
It would have certainly stripped the broadcasting rights and maybe open them up to other antitrust problems that they would not otherwise have. That is the bulwark. Like, that is why you don't have the NFL playing on Saturdays in September. But the catch with this is that law, like that ban on the NFL playing on Friday and Saturday nights, lest they lose their special privileges for TV, it only goes from the second Friday in September, it's college football week 2, to the second Saturday in December, which is essentially the week after conference championships. So really, Steven, I think if we wanted to actually make a fight about this and say college football is special, college football has to have its own day, then what Charlie Baker and the fellows should really be lobbying for, instead of restrictions on player compensation when they go to Capitol Hill, is to push back that Sports Broadcasting Act window by 1 week and say that actually now, through 3 Saturdays in December, you, the NFL, need to stay off of Saturday. Now, that would be not something that Roger Goodell would like. But, they could do that. I mean, they could do that, and they could say, you don't like it, we're going to take away your antitrust exemption.
You know what?
They're not gonna, but they could.
What bothers me about all this is not the competitive aspect to it. It's that, because there have been, look, I know I am not the average mainstream consumer. I also know I don't want to be. And I know that most of our audience doesn't want to be the average mainstream consumer. And so what I mean by that is, yeah, I've definitely sought out when, to use Alex's joke about the NFC South, like Carolina and Atlanta are shitting all over each other in a 9-6 Thursday night prime game. By the way, those Amazon Prime games were fucking terrible. The idea that NFL inventory is that good is just not true from a football perspective.
Oh, Steven, trust me,
this is something that ass football games.
You're not even going to be offended because you load the Falcons more than anybody. But like, when I need to like make a reference to someone about how the NFL has a hold on our pop culture and it would just never
Panthers
go away,
Falcons game in the rain,
I'm always like, yeah, like it's always NFC South teams that are playing. Like if it's like, wow, like there's a Tampa Bay Buccaneers Carolina Panthers game on,
that's because you're a spoiled Steelers
it.
fan and you don't realize how obnoxious your franchise is.
But like, I can at
a
least
nationwide
see
infection.
I can at least see it if it's like, oh, like there's a Seahawks 49ers game on. I understand why this bar is full of people screaming at the TV.
That's a whole other terrible problem that I do take personal offense to, because everyone's fandom is as valuable and you don't necessarily have to have a plurality of fandom. Like, again, on this show, I value a Wyoming fan as much as I value a USC or an Alabama fan. That's a whole other issue we'll park to the side, okay?
Yeah, but getting back to the Carolina Panthers are
I do, because someone it's funny. You know what? There's a kid who coaches, or a coach on one of my kids' teams, and he's from Charlotte, and he's an extremely knowledgeable guy. He's like a president of a company in Nashville, grew up in Charlotte, tries to go to 3 home games a year. Him and his buddies go every year. Like, he lives and dies with the Panthers.
You guys, are you G5ing? Richard, is he G5ing the Carolina Panthers right now?
No, what I'm saying is that oh my God, we just spent the entire opening of this show talking about this behemoth and how no one should question the monolith of the NFL. And then Alex wants to get in and be like, yeah, but some of these teams I don't even understand why people would follow them as fans.
No, that's not what
you also sound like a Canadian hockey fan, which is like a whole other terrible subset of human. Like, I don't even know why people would care about hockey in Tampa Bay, and then they win like 3 cups.
Oh, please.
You guys know I'm a Jags fan, right?
I support Richard on this. Like the idea that one fandom is not worthwhile is insane to me. Like, it's absolutely insane.
Time. That is not what I was saying.
That's literally what you just said. You said, look in a bar. I'll read it back to you. You said, if I see people going crazy for a Seahawks 49ers game in a bar, do you know how many decades the Seahawks were terrible? I love the Seahawks, by the way. That's not, no, back it up, Steelers fan. You fucked up, not me.
No.
I caught you being an NFL elitist.
The silent majority agrees with me. All that I am saying is that...
the silent majority agrees with you that some fandoms are not worthwhile.
We're not talking at some brewery in Mecklenburg County where obviously there's going to be Panthers fans. I'm talking about in a place where there's just general NFL fans whose teams are not playing, but you'll watch a game and like that.
This man literally complains about the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then he wants to scold people for irrelevant fandoms.
That is not what I was doing.
That's
please.
exactly what you were doing.
Also, there's no team other than the Jets. There's no team in the NFL that's like them, like the Pirates, because the league fetishizes its version of quote unquote parity, which means if you get a number one pick, within like 5 years, you'll probably be good.
Yeah, but there are flaws inside. There's flaws inside of that because of the media coverage cycle. Going back to my original
I love you, Panthers
point,
fans. I love you. I would never denigrate
I think you're about
your
to take an ass whooping from a couple fan bases here online.
I denigrate Panthers fandom way less than the guy who owns the team.
Didn't the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win the Super Bowl 3 years
He
ago?
threw drinks on his own fans.
Didn't the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win the Super Bowl 3 years ago?
He threw drinks on Jags fans, to be clear.
Didn't.
Oh, so Steven, now we count the 2020
Hey, by the
season as a
way,
real thing? Now we don't take
no,
outliers with it?
Here's a weapon I'm going to pull out of the sheath because this is how fun this episode is going. If you're listening and you take umbrage with Kirshner on the idea of a sort of subjective hierarchy of you should or should not give a shit on this fandom in the NFL, I want the city of New Orleans to tap in real fast on behalf of the NFC South and let AK know in the comments.
But do it in a nice way.
No, do it in a New Orleans way.
Steven, we're allies right now because Paul Skeens from LSU plays for the Pirates
now. I have
now.
activated Saints Twitter. And I will retweet it and let actual Saints Twitter know that Alex thinks that the NFC South fandom is representative of like an irrelevant fandom that's very superfluous, and it shows the NFL's unworthy, what would we call it, grip on the zeitgeist, right? That's what you said.
The latter is what I said.
Okay.
Yes, the latter is what I said.
Right, cool.
The former is not what I said.
I'll
I didn't
let
say
Saints
if you're
Twitter
a fan
know.
of those teams that you shouldn't care. I'm saying that it's always surprising.
You're saying
to me.
that if it's okay to care if you're a fan of the team, but they don't deserve any kind of platform or spotlight. That's what you said, and you don't understand why people would be cheering for them in a bar.
It's just about it's an incredible illustration of the NFL's hold on our
Seahawks-Niners
culture.
is okay, which is a rivalry that didn't exist until they reorganized the division.
Yeah, give me a little Packers Bears. Give me some real football. Some
What you
Steelers
sound
Ravens.
like specifically to me is a group of. I had a conversation once outside of an Auburn LSU tailgate with older fans than 20-year-old fans, 20 years older than I when I was working, like still going to press boxes. And they're like, you're a national writer? And I was like, yeah, I cover all of college football. Like, can you answer me something? And I was like, sure. And they're like, why the fuck do people think we care about Boise State? And they were so fed up and disgusted. And this is back when Boise's like 12-1, 13-1. They're like, why the fuck should any of us care about that? Now,
Steven.
There is no way to argue it back. No, if you want to be a diehard Carolina Panthers fan, keep pounding, baby. I support you, except for 2 games a year when you beat us by a field goal.
You are Boise Stating like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers owned by the people who own Manchester United? Are you kidding?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you want to be a diehard fan of any NFL team, I support you.
I agree.
Except
I would never poo-poo anyone for rooting for a bad sports team.
You literally framed it as the
team.
NFC South is a good example
Okay.
of why people are histrionic and overly invested in the NFL. Now, to my original point, I'm not a mainstream fan, and that's fine because I do believe people can be passionate about any kind of fandom they want. That's totally fine. But if you follow that line of logic out, it means that, yes, there have been times when a bad NFL game on Prime is on, and it can be any team from any division because oftentimes the Steelers play terrible football.
The Washington Commanders against anybody.
So,
absolutely.
Jags fan.
I will seek out the game on Thursday night, which might be something really, it might be some sickos level stuff, but it also might be a really good game in the Sun Belt or in Conference USA even. Like, you can put your political disposition against Liberty aside, but like if they're playing a close game and they're in contention for the New Year's Six slot like they were, that is of interest to me as a college football fan. So the premise of the episode, you're going to bump into the NFL because the NFL has made it that way. There's no other way to survive. And I guess the mentality I'm arguing here is almost to approach it from I don't love a lot of what the NHL does, but they have simply said, hey, we know we have a fandom and we know we can work to grow them organically, but we are not going to create the value set of what did we do against the NBA Finals last night or what did we do against this NFL game? And I'm not telling college that we should go be niche. I also think this whole conversation is a metaphor for the fact that you should worry less about your competition and more about yourself. Because college football's problems all originate, or I'd say 90% of them originate in college football. You can blame the NFL for some things systematically. Definitely. You can. You can blame the NFL for a lot of things in the historic growth. If you look at the rings of the tree that is college football, for sure. It's a free minor league that they have to invest and not police and not do anything with at all. But for the purpose of this conversation and the expansion of the playoff, I doubt a majority of our listeners are going to give two rat fucks what's going on in the NFL if you're talking about college football, a playoff game. A playoff game.
I agree.
But Godfrey, in the sense then, college football and the people who you say there's no leadership, blah, 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 which I'm not specifically arguing, like, they are doing what you are asking them to do.
Expanding the playoff?
They are just so... Yeah, they are just soldiering on into January and saying, all right, like, it's a shit burger.
Wait, but what's the shit burger? That they're up against the NFL one night? My God.
Yes, for purposes of the exercise, yes.
For their purposes. Thank you, as always, to our longest-standing partners here at Split Zone Duo at Homefield. That's at homefieldapparel.com. If you've yet to order from Homefield, you can do that now. You can use the promo code SZD20, that's SZD20, for 20% off your first order at Homefield. And even if you've already ordered from Homefield in the past, and why wouldn't you, quite frankly, this is a hot moment for the Homefield catalog. They are in the Diamond Classics game with really cool baseball jerseys and hats, the Hendrick Motorsports and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway collection. Homefield is always cracking off with really cool stuff at homefieldapparel.com, but I think right now, and we record this the week of the Indy 500, is an especially cool time for the Homefield catalog, so check them out at homefieldapparel.com. Also want to thank Nokian Tires for their support of this show. Nokian has been an excellent partner of ours for the last couple of seasons, not just in the podcast advertising space, but in the putting tires on our car that get us around everywhere we have to go, and in at least one of our cases, transport children in a minivan on Nokian Tires. We want to thank Nokian for their excellent support of the show, and we want to thank you, our subscribers, at splitzoneduo.com, where you can go and you can find our Substack, you can find bonus episodes, newsletters, chat, Q&A opportunities, and you can help us make this show. We think if you do that, you'll really enjoy it. The vast majority of people who sign up at splitzoneduo.com are with us for a really long time. I think I was looking the other day, and it's like 6 months in, well over 90% of the people who subscribe are still with us. We would love you to give it a shot as well at splitzoneduo.com. It's $10 a month, or you can get a free month with an annual subscription. Steven, I want to point this out. So, like, my interest in doing this segment is almost like a tactical thing for like the leaders of the sport who are all the time seem to be obsessed with chasing the maximal TV dollar, the maximum rating. And so here they are doing something where that is a little out of character because they are going up against something where they are going to get crushed by the behemoth. But
it's not avoidable.
I understand.
And I'm not even saying that.
Let me finish the thought.
I'm not saying that you are saying, but like it. At the end of the day, it is not avoidable.
Okay. Probably not. And especially, I would rather this than if you played these games on like a Wednesday night. I absolutely prefer this. So I'm not even criticizing it. But what I want to say is that I actually applaud, maybe you wouldn't get this idea by the topic selection, but I applaud that they're going after it and being like, all right, we're going to be the best version of ourselves, which means 3 of these 4 games are going to be on a Saturday and they're going to be on campus. And even though we're going to get fewer of the sidewalk fans, we're going to do it because, and the reason I'm excited about that and the reason I like it, even though the scheduling conflict with the NFL is sort of a bummer in the growth of the sport sense, is that it is the opposite. And I know Godfrey is going to be animated about this because you've talked about it for years. It is the opposite of what they have done with Thursday nights, which basically, when the NFL decided to really beef up Thursday Night Football, and the year they did that was 2018 when the Fox deal started, which has now been replaced by an Amazon deal, college football just kind of collectively got out of the paint on Thursday nights, like completely. And actually, we'll talk about, we had numbers to prove it now. Like, I liked that there was a decent college football game to a sometimes really good college football game on a Thursday night.
Buddy.
And now they're rarely.
You're showing your age a little bit, Alex, because there used to be a banger almost every Thursday night in the aughts.
I went to one as a kid. It was a Pitt Virginia Tech game where D'Angelo Hall was suspended for the first half of the game. and
I
Pitt
remember
won it
that
on a
game,
fullback dive with like
Yeah.
a minute left.
Dude, they were
Lusaka Polite.
they
Pitt
were-
fans will remember.
They
There
were
good
top.
ones.
They were top 10 upsets. They were top
But then
5
they quit.
games. Like,
But college football quit, and now you get like
But
the
who
bottom
quit,
of
Alex?
the American on
who,
Thursday
who
nights.
quit?
Well, this is a great question.
Who quit?
The answer
It's
I
not
wonder-
college
so
football.
Is the answer ESPN?
Yes.
Hold on here. Is the answer, can the answer be both in this respect? Because if you are, South Carolina is actually a perfect example. So Steve Spurrier actually, like, as I understand it, requested that Carolina open on Thursday. Remember when Carolina used to open on Thursday night, like every year when Spurrier was head coach?
Yeah.
I covered a few of those games.
I had
yeah.
heard that Spurrier I had heard that Spurrier actually kind of pushed for that to raise Carolina's profile. I do understand if you are an AD and you're saying, well, I liked being on Thursday night because it gave us big exposure, and now the NFL's on Thursday night, and now I don't get that exposure on Thursday night. Put us back on Saturday or throw us back on Saturday, which is something I know happened. That is a subplot in here. It's not just ESPN and the TV and the TV networks that quit on it as
It is.
you
It
like
is
to say.
overwhelmingly the majority ESPN's doing because they controlled the Thursday night inventory on the deals. And the other thing that you're not, well, you might be misremembering is that the inventory for SEC games went off of Thursday when the SEC network started, and so the option to have like there was a 2007.
Cam Newton, but Cam played
Yeah.
like Kentucky or something on a
Right.
Thursday night, didn't they?
So that that happened a good bit. Was that it became the ACC and the AAC in the sort of wake of the Big East thing the
Right.
Big East heyday was really the aughts. The SEC could have a Thursday night game on there and occasionally did. Some schools would quietly protest with the league office. There's a collection of the schools, you can probably guess which ones, that basically refused to. Like at my alma mater, it was an open thing because they were like, hey, there's no way to do the Grove. There's literally just no way to do it on like a random weeknight. You can't structurally shut down the campus. You'd have to shut down the school to do it.
Right. It's what I was talking about earlier with theoretically playing a playoff game on Tuesday.
So when
Wednesday.
the SEC network launched, the
get where
SEC
you're coming
inventory was no longer an issue. Now they occasionally would run them on Thursday nights when they debuted. They did South Carolina A&M, I think, was the Thursday night game, and then Arkansas Auburn was the Saturday game the first year. But the inventory shifted to where Prime ESPN was holding ACC and American. And what happened was ESPN started to realize, let's not play stronger cards against the NFL. It's exactly what Alex is saying, was like, if I'm holding, they moved some of their aces and their kings out of their deck just because they expanded into conference networks and the culture changed and there were so many more channels. But then also ESPN said, I'm not going to play this 9 or this 10 if the NFL is going to throw something out ahead of me, that was the problem, in my opinion, was they basically just walked away. They said, everyone's going to watch this usually shitty NFL game. And now, guess what, Tulsa? You're on 3 Thursdays.
To walk that out and put data behind it. Because, Godfrey, you've talked about this for years. Like, this has been a frequent single wing topic of yours. I've never doubted you. It's always matched with what I've kind of had impressed upon me just by looking every week at what's on Thursday nights. It was pretty common. I went back and looked year by year from like 2000, which is as far back as I decided to look, until like the late 2010s, to have 8 to 10 ranked power conference teams playing games on Thursday nights over the course of the season. It was a pretty regular number, like 7, 8, 9, 10. 2018, the first year that Fox expanded the NFL Thursday night schedule and made it the big blowout thing, and then it's only gotten bigger since then. There were 4 games involving ranked Power 5 teams that year. Not a single ranked versus ranked game. There were usually 2 or 3 of those in a given year. 2019, there was 1 ranked team, none ranked versus ranked. Long and short, there hasn't been a ranked versus ranked Thursday night game involving power conference teams in this sport since 2017, when there was a Louisville-NC State game. There's now 2 to 3 games a year on Thursday nights where anybody appearing in the top 25 from a power conference plays. Now, that does not mean that there are not good Thursday night games. Like a couple years ago, Coastal Carolina was a great team. They were loaded up on Thursday nights, but it does illustrate the point. And like UCF played plenty of Thursday night games when they were on their run. But it illustrates the point that from the network perspective, like the stuff that they think will sell, they're just out. They just decided that Thursday night is no longer a place to put college football games that we think will appeal to a mass audience because we don't want the smoke. And
Pretty
that's
much.
a bummer because I would personally rather watch a good Thursday night college football game than a bad NFL Thursday night game. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't pick a real NFL banger on a Thursday night oftentimes over like a middling upper tier college game. I might, depending on who was playing. But
I
It's a-
only
it is a bummer.
watch the NFL if college is not on, and if the Falcons are against college, then I will probably dual screen a situation. But again,
it's a bummer
I'm
when
a different kind
when
of consumer.
college only gives you like it does feel like it's so much Tulsa, man. Not trying to come down on Tulsa just because they hired Kevin Wilson,
It's a lot of
which was
fucking
not a
Tulsa,
good hire.
dude. It's a lot of Tulsa.
But like it's a lot of Tulsa. It's just a lot of Tulsa. Like do we? It's not a particularly compelling program right now. It's a lot of Tulsa on Thursday nights.
I think that obviously I fall in a different category on whether I will watch an NFL game over a college football game if they on a Thursday night will go up against each other. But like I do think, and it does kind of go back to the hemming and hawing concern in a funny way. And this goes all the way back to the top of the episode, Alex, when you read off that NFL schedule on the specific Saturdays. What happens if CJ Stroud tears his ACL?
Get ready to
Like,
learn
it takes-
Brian Hoyer. Who's the Texans' backup quarterback now?
But right now, yes. Will gamblers watch it? Yes. Will fantasy football people watch it? Yeah. But you can sit here and say, well, they're putting that game on Black Friday, and then Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles 3 plays into the season, and that's now the worst game of the NFL season. Like you can sit here and complain and whatever about that, but you don't know if those games are actually going to be certified bangers.
What's
at
the
least
point?
That late.
I don't understand that the NFL isn't. I don't get it.
No, the point is you can win some of those sidewalk fans back with a guaranteed competitive game that at least will have one, possibly two, proper helmets that anybody walking around this megalopolis knows versus Brian Hoyer against even Patrick Mahomes.
Okay. So good?
It's not much ado about nothing, but it is
they ran away
for
from
the
but
situation.
they're never going to do that, Richard. They ran away.
No, they will in January. I'm saying in January. I'm not talking about Thursday night. I'm talking about in January.
Yeah,
I'm talking
I
about
don't
with
really
these
think it's
playoff
going to be that
games.
bad. Honestly, I really don't. I think it's. I mean, the playoff is. Hey, if you really want to get into it, like cover your ears, Tallahassee.
Yeah,
you really want to engineer a good playoff because if your goal is to fuck winning, hold serve in this situation, you want to engineer a really good playoff.
Speaking of cover your ears, Tallahassee, we did poll our Substack subscribers about their best Thursday night memories, sort of as like a crowdsourcer to confirm to ourselves, yeah, like there used to be a lot of bangers on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
Landon, a Florida State fan, wrote that they kind of hate Thursday nights as an FSU fan. We got a lot of feedback about Florida State losses on Thursday nights being either the greatest or the worst memories of that day of the week in college football. A 1995 game against Virginia, where Landon says, I will not pound my fists arguing that Dunn, I think that's Warwick Dunn, was in, like some of my Knoll brethren will, but I wish we had access to 2024 camera and a pylon cam, and a 2002 choking at Louisville during a tropical depression.
I was bartending during that game in a restaurant, and the whole restaurant stopped when they lined up for the at the last play. I think it ends in a kick, and like wait staff, bartenders, and customers, we all just stopped and like watched the television because you couldn't see it. This is pre-HD. This is like when CRTs were still the norm, and it was just like waves of water. And then Louisville upsets it, and then dude, Bobby was pissed.
Yeah, the 95 game, I think, Godfrey, you correct me, Florida State was the number one team in the country, wasn't it?
They hadn't lost in a long time.
Probably,
in the ACC.
Yeah. By the way, I was a child then, so I mean, I'm not like that old.
So, Steven, I think like I mean, I don't know. It seems like we might see this slightly similarly, slightly differently. But the thing that I guess I should address that we haven't really addressed is why should we care? And if the answer is we shouldn't, then that's cool. That we just shouldn't care, even though we just did a podcast about it. Like, we, as people who are going to pay attention to college football anyway, like, should we care at all that this big showcase for the sport will get fewer casual sidewalk eyeballs on it because of the timing against the NFL? Or is it, that's not my problem. I'm not going to get a rebate on my cable package if more people watch. I'm not going to get a tuition rebate if I'm a student because there's
they're
more
not
people watching.
It's not like they're going to say, hey, guys, the Chiefs game fucked us up. We're going back to 14 playoffs.
No.
I think that Godfrey's general bent, which is also my general bent, by the way, on like TV ratings, I think the encroachment of sports business interest, I think it's both good and not so good. When I get to the not so good is conversations about television. I think that the conversations about television ratings, because Godfrey, as someone who used to do this, manage a television product, I should say, or at least run PR for
we would have the meetings.
you know how 10 different ways any network can couch television ratings. I mean, you can. It's honestly art.
Oh, it's all
in a
bullshit.
sense.
Oh my God. It's such
all
bullshit.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Nobody
works harder than TV PR people.
Dude, we used to sit in a conference room, and Viacom, Spike TV, would be on the speakerphone thing, and we would just sit there, and you would hear like the ratings people, which is basically like a quant, like figuring out how to snake it around. That's when you see those graphics now on Instagram, and it's like number 1, and then the smaller font is like males 18 to 45 from the hour of 9 to 10 Eastern.
Yes. Steven, the other thing that really gets me now that they're doing all the time, NBC is a terrible offender of this, is something will happen at like a specific moment in a sporting event, and they'll throw it in that main
peak
they'll
ratings.
throw it in that main spot on Peacock for a second, like just for a second, and it'll do a quick spike, and they'll be like, wow, like look how many people are watching. This happened a couple weeks ago. In women's golf right now, there's this incredible player, Nelly Korda, who's won 6 of her last 7 tournaments. And she was going to win a major on a Sunday afternoon. And NBC Sports PR puts out a release that says, NBC Sports delivers most watched LPGA Chevron Championship since 2010. That's the headline. Very exciting. What a great moment for women's golf. Things are really growing. You get down to the second bullet point, and it says, final round averaged 936,000 viewers, on par with last year's event, which finished in a playoff. And then it says Sunday's final round peaked at an amount that was to a 15-minute window from 6:30 to 6:45 p.m. And
when she was on the last hole,
right? When she's on the last hole, and when you can put it on like the special spot on your streaming app. It's ridiculous the way that
it's an infection.
PR people try to get away with spinning.
It's an infection. It's the media's fault. We choose what we send to the consumer. And in the last 3 years, people think I'm crazy, but people also thought I was crazy 5 years ago when I started talking about a Super League. I have seen colleagues and people I respect and good reporters frame entire stories and features. The entire Colorado beat was around television ratings, and it was justified. That is a slippery fucking slope, man. And also, the average consumer doesn't give a shit. This is something I don't understand the disconnect.
So this is basically where I was. That is basically where I was going. Not Colorado. Jesus Christ. Where I was basically going was I have always been interested in why fans are interested in television ratings specifically. I do understand that in the broadest base sense, they are a measure of how popular something is. It's why some people care about streaming data from your favorite artist or box office from a movie franchise that you like a lot. I get it on its face. But when you get like an inch deeper, beyond like just a headline, I've always sort of been really interested in why people care that much. And when it's, as far as sports are concerned, it's the most confusing to me because we do keep score on a Saturday afternoon. Like, there is a literal score that said Colorado won 4 games and Colorado lost 8 games, right? It is this moving of the goalposts exercise that we talked about on a previous show.
Yeah,
about
but
Colorado.
everybody did it last year.
That's when you throw that in, right? Right. Okay. Again, and I understand why Colorado was a phenomenon of a certain sense, and television ratings helped you couch it. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't get it or that I thought that was untoward. But I'm just sort of commenting on the whole thing, not just Colorado. I'm commenting on the whole thing and how I think it's interesting to me how fans are interested in television ratings beyond, I guess,
because we taught them to be, and it's our fault. And also, it was. Let me just say this is 1/3 of the show. It was stupid and untoward to deliver Colorado the way that we in the media did last year. It remains. It's dumb now, but it's considerably less dumb. So I think we're learning.
I think you got it backwards about who was wagging who with the Colorado thing last year. I think we were, as the media, responding to. I think that was a culture to media, not a
fucking chance. No, sorry.
Okay.
No.
Jeffrey, that was for the month. It was hot. It was an absolute phenomenon in the sports.
How'd you know it was hot?
Deion Sanders has a pretty big megaphone.
Television ratings.
And
Go back and look at the stories written. Go back and look at the stories. You wrote them.
Hold on a second. Yeah, I wrote stories that a lot of fucking people read. Like, it. Then don't. This is where I get to. Yes, there's a chicken and egg thing. Don't read the story. Don't retweet the tweets. Don't engage with the content.
We are arbiters.
Yes, is it being served to you?
We are arbiters.
Yes, I am not saying that the media is not arbiters, that the media does not serve people something. But if you really don't give a shit about it, don't comment on the thing.
Most of the people, but there was also a sizable amount of people who were like, "Hey, I don't give a shit." That was the comment. That was the comment, and that's what was so amazing about Colorado was you only get a certain amount of information from a media outlet. You only get a certain, there's. I always use The Athletic because I think they're probably still the most well-staffed, or maybe even like ESPN.com. ESPN.com right now, people who are writing after every college football weekend, what is it, 9, 8? Let's say it's 9 for the sake of this conversation. 9 people. Even if it was 15, you still have to pick. You then go and look at the landscape and decide what is going to work for the audience. What you determine. This is why they're called gatekeepers. This is what they tell us the first day and the first semester of journalism school. And so to look back, I really get frustrated when we don't take ownership of shit we blow out of proportion. And the reason it feeds into this episode is because I do think media needs to show, media is so scared and so insecure right now because of what we've lived through as an industry that we're constantly looking around and going, "Oh, did that get TV ratings? Let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah,
let's do that.
Man,
hey, we got
some lights
everything
on,
scale,
man.
volume. Hey guys, we got to have engagement on this. So let's do 9 Deion stories. Let's send a reporter to Colorado for the rest of the season. Okay, guys, let's do that. Let's beat the flying fuck out of it. Hey guys, people really care about these TV. Oh, you know what? There's a playoff game. It didn't do enough NFL against the NFL. We need more NFL reporters. You know what we should do? We should start making content that's more centric to the NFL draft, even though they're technically college writers. We see it all the time. You don't have to do that. No,
look, nobody has to do anything. I want to kind of point out, I think you guys are letting an elephant in the room walk past on TV ratings. There are 2 areas of sports where I am sympathetic to why people care and have a rational reason to care about TV ratings. 1, women's sports. Why is that? Because particularly in the college sports realm, you spend years and years getting under-resourced, having the NCAA, for instance, treat the basketball tournament as a second-rate product worthy of worse facilities, worse branding, couldn't use the March Madness name than the men's tournament. And so I understand why during the Caitlin Clark run this year, fans of women's basketball are like, look at these ratings. There's demand for this because demand transitions to better treatment by people in position to treat the sport better. And the second,
money translates to better treatment.
But I think in this case that's close enough. The second area is college sports because, well, whether people are watching depends on what your future is.
No,
I don't think major college football has to
But what about? I mean, we talk a lot here about how we think that within 1 to 2 more media rights cycles, for instance, the top of the Big Ten might decide, Ohio State, are we sure we want to keep sharing money with like Northwestern?
Yeah, it's
at some point, there's a plexiglass barrier there, and there's going to be a few schools who are kind of in the middle, and like ask UCF and USF, and Godfrey's talked about this wisely on this show in the past, how important the timing is of when people are looking at you and what their impression of you is. If the Big 12 expands in 2008, guess who's in the Big 12? USF. Guess who's not? UCF. But UCF is a hot property in 2019, 2020, 2021. USF is not a hot property in 2019, 2020, 2021. Guess who's in the Big 12? So I understand why women's sports fans and college sports fans do. Well, of course, they had to try. Like they had to build.
Yeah. I wouldn't.
And but I understand
give UCF
why fans care in this sport and in women's sports.
I don't. I look. Telling. So there's 134 with 4. So Kennesaw, shout out. Telling 90 of those teams that they should care about television ratings is a recipe for anxiety.
Agreed.
They can't do anything about it, and they
shouldn't
can't
be
control
one size.
it, and it's going
should not
to
be one size.
Look, the schism is coming. Okay. At this point, you should like pay attention when people like me who are heretics start to look, like we know what we're doing. The schism's coming. It'll be one more right cycle. But by delivering that information, I can't empower any fans of Indiana football or James Madison or Cal. I mean, I can do a list of, 80, 90 teams. They can't do anything about it.
Dude, write some Federalist papers about this.
But they can't do anything about it, Alex. Like
Foment Revolution.
Right. But this is, and I have made this point on the show before. In Europe, they super leagued, and they literally took to the streets, and it wasn't just a small tier clubs that did that. It was fans of Manchester United that marched on their stadium. It was fans of their version of the biggest and the best, is what I said. So yes, Godfrey's point, what can they do about it? My thing, when we get into this depth of the conversation, I do not think American sports fans are as about it.
They don't know yet
to actually get the change that they wish to see.
That's because they've been lied to, and they don't know yet. South Carolina fan listening to this right now still thinks that they're going to be okay.
And they're lying. Sure. And they're lying to them over there too.
Purdue thinks they're going to be okay. And if you think you're going to be okay because you're just a member of these two conferences right now, I got fucking news for you, buddy. The next time they cut up the pie, they're just going to use they're going to do it from a different angle. So to get back to this, television ratings, encouraging people to follow them, I don't know what good that's necessarily going to do for the overwhelming majority of the sports consumers. Television.
Would you, Godfrey, I want to ask you this. Would you completely and totally ignore them? Because I think there's probably two ends here, right? Either you completely, totally ignore every network press release ever, or you use it as a legitimate, like a catalyst to write stories.
I would get smarter. I would be better. Again, so it's extreme responsibility. Own your work. Own your position in this process. And so, if you are copying, pasting the ESPN PR, which shout out to them, that's a dangerous thing to do, then you're part of the problem. If you can, this is going to be another area in which it's incumbent upon the media to become more educated, better educated on how these numbers are created. Like we just said, they're Fugazi, right? Mostly. Or if they're not Fugazi, they're definitely nipped and tucked and trimmed to suit
some leaps of logic.
Since we kind of know that's what's happening, we also need to have that context delivered to the media. And that's one thing that I just don't see. I don't see aggressive relationships, the kind of adversarial challenging of authority. This is why I say this all the time. I view ESPN and Fox to be part of the sport that we cover. They are as integral,
Yes.
if not more, than the Atlantic Coast Conference or RIP Pac-12 or the SEC for that matter. They're all part of it. That's why I take umbrage with some of the coverage decisions of those editorial outfits because of, I'm awake. It's a logical thing to do, but we're missing so much context. I think these ratings wins and these dumb narratives get passed off, and we don't follow up and educate the people who are consuming the sport, and then they beat their chest about television ratings. And I guess sometimes you should, but you know what's so funny about television ratings and like the powers of college football? When you get SEC on SEC in a major event that isn't the actual conference championship, large swaths of the country tune out, right? This is one of the reasons I've preached that college football has to stay a national sport because you have to engage the entire map. But if you just read ESPN's PR because they are a stakeholder in the Southeastern Conference, you would never know that. So that you have to discern this information and you have to provide context and report and actually find. You know what I would love is that if Richard had to write a story for an outlet that I won't pick on ESPN the entire time. Fox sends over some numbers on what Big Noon Saturday did. There needs to be more independent, reputable sources to actually analyze this information and then work as a third, not a watchdog necessarily, guys, but just as a third party that is capable of metering out what's true and what's not. I think that would be really helpful. And then I would be okay with all of this ratings talk.
I think you're right. I think that